This episode is all about CEO lessons learned in 2021. And some of these are reminders. Some of these have been big breakthroughs this year, but I really wanted to condense everything down into 4 concrete pillars that we could go through that were super helpful for me this year. And I hope they will be helpful for you too. Number 1, advocate for your own clarity. So I look at this as one of my number 1 responsibilities as a CEO and as a strategist. I need to demand clarity. I need to understand what's going on. And in the past, I really think I held back, right? I was like, either, okay, these people can deal with this. Like, I'm not really part of this department. They can run with it. I don't really need to know what was going on, which was doing a disservice to everyone in the company, right? Because I am strategic. I love strategy, and I needed to know what was going on everywhere in order to offer the strategy that could move the needle. I think also people are afraid to ask a lot of questions, right? Like, I do this not just with the team, but with people we work with our, financial professionals. They can tell you, I ask them, it's got to be incredibly annoying. It really does. But I ask them so many questions because I don't want to abdicate financial responsibility for my business, right? Because if something happens with the business financially, it's not on them. Like, that's on me. So I need to understand everything that's going on. And sometimes that looks like emailing them 5 questions in a row about something they sent me. Sometimes that means looking dumb and admitting that I don't understand something that maybe feels basic, right? So not being afraid to look stupid or to be annoying or to, any of that, because your responsibility is to demand clarity. If you are the strategist in your company, you need to advocate for yourself understanding everything important in the business, because without that clarity, you cannot offer effective strategy.
Yeah. And I've really learned, this too, by Margy really demanding answers from me, because, in our company, Margy serves as CEO. I serve as chief operating officer. I'm leading our sales team. I'm working closely with our, booking agent team. And so I also have to do this as strategist to the departments that I'm working really closely with. And it's helped me too, because she asks me so many questions. I then do the same, with our sales team, for example, asking a lot of questions. And yeah, in the beginning, I can definitely confirm that at first it's annoying both to receive the questions and to ask them. Because you're like, oh God. Because at first, and it's important, just like, just thinking about personal development stuff, like, you have to not be afraid to trigger people, because in the beginning, when you start asking these questions, like, you do trigger people. Like, I was triggered when Margy asked me a lot of questions, because then all of the insecurities come up. Oh, fear of looking dumb, fear of not having the right answers, fear of, failing. But then when you realize, oh, it's just a question, it doesn't mean anything. And then when you ask the questions as the strategist, again, you have to not be afraid to trigger people. And then you get better at it too. The more you do it, the better you get at asking the questions. And, be in communication. Like, when I'm working with, with our sales team, I'm asking these questions. Like, I've literally said the phrase, I'm asking these questions because I can't lead you unless I know what's going on, which I'm sure is something that you've said to me, Margy. And that really helps the team not feel like you're breathing down their neck, because they're like, oh, okay, you're asking these questions so you can lead me better. Like, once all of that is communicated, it just helps everyone work so much better together.
Yeah, absolutely. And it does annoy people. And you sometimes have to trigger people because they feel like, why are you questioning me? Why don't you trust me? Or they're like, who's this jerk, like, sitting up here wanting answers? I'm the one down here working my butt off. Like, I don't have time to answer your questions, and having to be like, cool, I can save you some time, but you have to answer my questions. So really standing for that no matter what it brings up in people. And I like what you're saying too about you do get better at it and you train your people. Like your people know what to expect. They know she's going to want to know this. So I'm going to make sure I know this. I'm going to make sure I have the numbers. I'm going to make sure I talk to my direct reports so I have these answers, because now I'm trained to know that this is what she's always going to want to know.
Yeah. And the other thing that has to do with asking questions is you learn, and your direct reports learn to answer with the facts and what you know. And literally this was in a conversation with our manager, hearing, because I observed this conversation where he said, like, I believe, and Margie's like, I don't really want to hear the answer unless it's, I know, because a belief or I think or a guess, I can't plan a strategy around a guess. And then like literally the same thing, Margie and I were voice messaging this morning about some strategy stuff. And I was like on my phone, I wasn't at my computer. And so I answered, I was like, yeah, I think this. And then I deleted the message. And I said to Margie, because sometimes you can see if someone deletes it. I was like, hey, I deleted that message because I'm not going to answer you until I know. And she was like, I forget what you said, but you were like, wow, living for this vibe.
Yeah, I was so proud. And that's the other thing. Like as a CEO, as a strategist, you are training the rest of the business. You
on
are
how to be strategic,
on
it's
how
not natural.
to think.
Yes.
You're not training them on the tactics of what to do. You are training people on how to think. And that takes so much time. It takes so much consistency, so much repetition, and those are the things that take a lot of time, but it's so gratifying when you look back and see, wow, these people are like thinking differently. They are so strategic now.
Yeah, it really does take something to train people on how to think strategically. And I can attest, because I am not naturally a strategist. Like I have learned how to think more strategically from Margie being a strategist. So just know, if you are really strategic and this is like a strength for you, you're going to have to be in Margie's seat and do that. It's going to take time. You have to literally tell people, this is the question you need to ask yourself. This is the way you need to think about this. It is such a process to teach someone how to think differently, but I can tell you, like, I've gotten better at thinking more strategically. I can literally see my direct reports thinking more strategically. It's 100% worth the triggers and the frustration of being like, why don't they think like me?
Yeah. Yeah. And it takes a lot of time to figure it out. Like I've always been strategic, but I've really gone from a leader who was like, just do it, I'm right, to like someone who understands the importance of not just saying, hey, I'm strategic, trust me, this is going to work, but who understands that you need other people thinking that way so that they don't always need you, and so that they know how to evaluate things themselves. Also, people don't love it when you say, just do it, right? So I've really had to learn how to be strategic about how I work with other people, how I mentor people, how can I break down some of the things that happen in my mind in like 2 seconds, where I look at something, I evaluate it, I know what needs to happen. How do I break that down? How do I break into numbers? Okay, these are the questions I'm asking myself. These are the answers. This is, and really starting to show your work, as they always said in math class. But the more you can do that as a strategist, the more you can use questions instead of telling people what to do, asking them questions that will get them thinking like you and leading them to find answers themselves. It's really worth the journey.
Yeah. And this, like, honestly, this lesson right here is the key for you as a business owner to elevate and develop leaders, because, and I chit chat with a lot of entrepreneur friends that are in my role, like leading the sales team, because for a lot of entrepreneurs and founders, like, you take on that role of building the sales team because you were the first person to sell. And so this is the key to unlock your freedom from like maybe leading a team of direct reports who are selling, is teaching them how to think strategically and critically about driving these results.
Yeah. And it starts from the top. If the CEO is not doing this, the rest of the business is not doing this. Number 2, this is another one of like, be annoying, basically. So number 1 was advocate for your own clarity, demand answers. Number 2 is be a stand for excellence, even when it's annoying. right? And I'm not talking about nitpicking stuff that doesn't matter, right? You have to have the strategy piece of understanding what's actually moving the needle and what is a little thing that, yeah, maybe they're not doing it the way I would do it, but it's just as good. The result's fine. It doesn't matter. It's not an important focus. Don't go after all of that, because that's when you get micromanaging and it's just not necessary, right? But really standing for excellence on the things that matter. And I have really been doing this. I am a very intense person and I have very high standards. And I have been met with people being a little maybe wary of that. And part of that is my own projections on them, right? That idea that maybe I'm too much, that I think that's a fear a lot of us have that's unfounded, but it does affect how we show up. And it's been so wonderful. And part of this has been working with Stacey Baronfass, who is an amazing energetic coach, to really step into all of my extraness. And I love excellence. I want things to be amazing. My wife just said people shouldn't ask you for feedback if they don't want 3 paragraphs. Like, I love it. I love excellence, not perfection, never perfection. That's not real, but I love excellence. And I had been holding back because I was afraid to overwhelm other people or be too intense. And I knew people were working really hard, right? I didn't want to say, basically, great, but this isn't good enough. And so finding the ways to stand for excellence in a way that also isn't totally disheartening for your team, while knowing that sometimes they're not going to be happy to hear it. So some examples, especially with our content, have been like, I'm coming in and I'm not the one writing these emails. Like, that's important to remember. But when I'm hearing that emails are going out for something, I'm asking questions like, is this email amazing? I literally said, will people be dazzled by this? And that's an annoying thing to say to someone who's working their butt off with a bunch of other moving pieces. It is. I know it is. But it's also so important. And I know that by asking that question, by getting people asking questions like that about the content going out, the content is going better. It's getting better and better. And we're seeing results from it.
Yeah. I can confirm the annoying and the results. It's how Margie shows her love. I can confirm that.
Yes. Yeah. No, and it's so helpful though, because when you're the person in it, that's why I think this is such a good CEO lesson. Mm-hmm. You need to have enough removal. You need to be involved enough in everything, like we said with number 1, that you know what's going on so that you can effectively lead and strategize. But you also need to keep yourself removed enough that you're able to ask these questions, because when you're in it, you're just thinking, okay, I got to do this, this, and this. I'm going to get it out. You're not thinking, is this amazing? Is this training not just good, not just the training we've done a million times that we know people like? What's going to be new about this training? How are we going to make people walk away changed from this training? And by asking questions like that, everything we create has totally up-leveled this year.
Yeah, definitely.
Number 3, give yourself a bird's eye view, even when you are in it. This is good for CEOs, but this is also really important for managers, any type of leaders, even people who aren't officially by title leaders, right? Because we want everyone thinking strategically, no matter what position they're in the business, no matter if they're a leader officially or not, everybody should be thinking strategically. We kind of touched on this before, right? The importance of being removed. But what if it's something that you can't be removed from, right? There are certain things that we need to get in there, whether it's something that is part of our role right now, or maybe someone's sick or someone's out and it's your business, it's your problem. You got to jump in. So how do we get that bird's eye view, get that value of objective oversight when we're so deep in it? So as Jess said, we had a launch recently and I was walking, which is when I do all of my thinking right now. And I was walking and I was thinking of Jess in the launch, working her butt off, doing an amazing job, like so deep in it with Sammy. And I was thinking, what would be helpful? Like, how would I approach this in a way that was how would I approach this in a way that was effective and bring that strategy? And how can I give them that tool without them needing me to do it? So I thought, what about an exercise where this was Sunday morning? And I said, Jess, I want you to pretend this isn't your business. This isn't your launch. You are a consultant who has been brought in on Sunday morning of the launch. So you can look at everything that's happened without being attached to doing things the way we've already done them. And as an outside consultant looking at this situation, how would you approach the strategy of getting us to the goal?
So on Sunday of our masterclass, as Margy said, she told me this exercise and it was really helpful. So just as a side note for anyone doing launches, just the biggest lesson that I've learned over 2 full years of doing launches. Our first launch was actually 2 full years ago in November 2019. This is not a set it and forget it strategy. Our best launches are ones where literally you are making a plan for the next 2 hours, stopping, evaluating, assessing, and then making a new plan for the next several hours because things are constantly changing. And so we reached this point where Sunday was the day we closed carts. We were like right at the end. And I was like, okay, we just kind of went through and executed the last plan. Now, what are we doing now? It was like, I was tired, but I was also like, just not having that clarity. And when Margy asked that question, it really kind of pushed me out of the like deep implementation mode. And I had looked at it differently. So I was like, okay, let's focus on the numbers. And so I just looked at all the stats and I'm like, what story are these numbers telling me? Not what I feel like what's happening, but where have our sales so far come from? Where did those calls come from? Where did those up? Like just all of it. And from that, I was like, okay, made a decision. And Margy was like, great. So that's what you got to do. You got to just push yourself to get out of the weeds and look at it, detach yourself from feeling like it's your thing and just being like, what would I say if I didn't own this business and it wasn't mine? It was very helpful.
I love it. And really the focus of this has been, I think one of the through lines of this episode has been, how do you think? How can you practice new ways of thinking? How can you lead your team to start thinking about things and approaching things differently so that they don't need you as much for strategy, right? Because they know how to strategize now. So love that so much. All right. Number 4, getting really honest with yourself about where you're not showing up enough as a leader and what you might be avoiding. And this is important because like the launches, like so many things in business, this is not a set it and forget it. There are different seasons in business and decisions that you made about your calendar, about how you spend your time in one season may have been fine, and they may not be the next season or the next quarter or whatever it is. And this is something that happened to me. So there was a number of things that I wasn't a part of, like a lot of the sales and marketing stuff, a lot of the internal team meetings, because I was really focused on, okay, I'm focusing on like strategy and high level vision and creating content as a CEO. And I was really able to see that I got to the point where I was too removed from the team and I was too removed from the business. And we talked about asking questions, but you can't always know everything you need to know by asking questions. Sometimes you really need to consistently be there in certain situations, in certain departments. You just need to be there because that's when the magic happens. That's when you catch things. That's when you ask questions that you wouldn't have thought about if you just got like a briefing of the meeting from someone who was there. So I am continually having to evaluate how I spend my time and look at what am I avoiding? I got to the point where there were so many meetings I wasn't on and I didn't want to be on them, right? Because I hadn't been on these meetings. I felt I had a story that it was going to be stifling. But I really got real with myself as like, what does the business need right now and going forward from me as a leader? And I added a bunch of meetings to my calendar that I hadn't previously been on. One meeting, I made them reschedule the recurring time because it was at a time I couldn't be at so that I could actually be at these things. And I'm not talking about micromanaging. I'm talking about being present and looking at where you're avoiding seeing what's going on in your business or avoiding really getting in there with your team and overcome that. And delegation is really, really important. But are you avoiding or are you delegating? Are you delegating in a healthy way that you're like, yep, I'm seeing the reports, I'm seeing the results of what this, this part of the business is doing without me. They're on track. They don't need me. That's great. But if the results aren't what you want, then you need to look at how are you not present enough as a leader in the departments where you're not getting the results that you want. Number 5, this is the last one. It's kind of a bonus lesson. There's like 4 core ones, but this 5 bonus one I really like. This is something one of our coaches said to us, and I thought it was so brilliant. And we were talking to her, Kelly Roach. She's a great coach. And we were talking about this place between 3 million-ish and 10 million is so crazy because it feels like everything, sometimes you don't know if you're up leveling or crumbling. And not to say that the business is falling apart, but to get from 3 to 10 million in annual revenue, so many systems have to change. So much has to become new. It's almost like the business is being reborn. And I said that to her. And I said, sometimes we're evolving so much, we're changing so many things. It's like, is the business crumbling or up leveling? And she said, the business won't crumble if you don't. And I thought that was so powerful. And it immediately made me feel so grounded. The business won't crumble if you don't. That is so true. And there's so many external things you cannot control. You cannot control algorithms. You cannot control ads. You can't control your team or other people or your clients and what they do. All you can control is yourself. And that is such an empowering thing. And when she said that, I was like, all right, I can't control anything externally. I have no idea what's going to happen, but I know that I won't crumble. And it's so important to have those self-care routines, right? I meditate, I exercise, I read books that help me think differently and feel better. Whatever it is for you, have that stuff in place so that you don't crumble.
Yeah, this was such a helpful reminder. And as Margy said, I was on that call too, and it was just so grounding to remember. And I remember hearing her share that lesson. I remember probably a year or 2 ago, we had asked her, hey, can you do a training or a video on the road from 7 to 8 figures? And so there were so many lessons she shared in that video that at the time I was like, okay, got it. And now, a year or two, I don't even know, a year or 2 later, I'm like, okay, now we're living that lesson that I heard it in theory a year ago. And now we're in the middle of redoing like every single system and learning all this stuff. And the focus on health, physical health, mental health has been so vital. Like so vital, finding the workout routines that work best for you, meditating. I mean, we were literally joking on our morning meeting today. We had a really stressful day yesterday. There were some things that happened that kind of put us into a panic. And we were just like, I meditated 3 different times yesterday. Like there were just multiple times where I'm like, gotta go meditate. Having those things in place, it allows you to do, so much more, operate at a higher level and have a mental toughness that allows you to do so much. And when you look at people that have achieved so much, running huge companies, doing great things, it is that saying that like everyone has the same 24 hours in a day. Everyone's human, but what do these people have that are succeeding at such a high level? They have that physical and mental toughness. They have focus on their health. Most of them, if they don't, they might be crumbling inside, but hopefully most of them are thriving because they really do focus on their mental and physical health just as much as they do on their business.
Love it. All right. So a quick overview of my CEO lessons from 2021. Number 1, advocate for your own clarity. Number 2, stand for excellence, even when it's annoying. Number 3, give yourself a bird's eye view, even when you are in it. Number 4, look at where you are not showing up enough as a leader and change it. And number 5, the business won't crumble if you don't. Let us know, were these lessons helpful for you? Are they similar to what you're experiencing? Is there something else you've learned as the CEO this year that you want to share? We want this to be interactive. We're talking at you through the podcast, but we want to hear your point of view too. So email us at support@interviewconnections.com. We would love to hear your thoughts.
Also, hit us up on Instagram. I know we're not supposed to give multiple calls to action, but I'm going to break our own rule because we are active on Instagram. So you're on your phone, you're listening to us, go to Instagram @InterviewConnections, follow us, send us a message, and we can respond there as well. All right. Happy 2021, everyone. And I'm excited for your new year.